just please go on our YouTube channel right now. Go to youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos, so you can just see how dapper Tunde looks, just shining white compared to Nwaji's trollish dark.
Dark and lovely, baby.
Yeah. Okay. But as we're about to go into the first set of stories, Val, do you want to let the good people know how they can communicate with us this morning?
Yes, Lagos. You can send a message, now messages only, to WhatsApp number 0809 444 0981. That's 0809 444 0981. Also on Twitter, use that hashtag freshlypressed981 and tweet at us at smooth981FM.
All right, so let's get into the first story. We have tweeted our headline, so of course you can follow along. We'll talk about this one in from the Vanguard newspaper. The Reformed All Progressive Congress is asking the court to void the APC convention and sack Oshiomwhole and 53 others. So this is coming in from the new leader, the leader of the new faction, there you go, Baba Galdiva, who's basically saying that the conduct of the convention itself for the APC violated several provisions of the party's constitution and the Electoral Act. So essentially they're saying off with their heads, but not quite their heads, just their job titles. Your thoughts on this, Nwaji?
Well, I think for me, what truly concerns me is when you look into this article, this is July, so we're looking at elections maybe about 9 to 10 months from now. We're already getting into this infighting, squabbling, and issues within parties and everything else, which is just going to be a manifestation of the further problems we're going to catch ourselves in in 2019. But the larger conversation that always worries me is that when people come out with these very, very, very proclamations regarding their issues and who should step in. Now, INEC, it's an acronym for independent. I'm just going to leave it with that word, independent. So just in case people don't know what that means, they should go look it up in the dictionary. So you asking an independent body to now step in to more or less speak towards your voice regarding the things that you feel are not working kind of actually doesn't add up.
And just to sort of to buttress what you're saying as well, just note that the headline in the Vanguard is rather misleading because it puts it across as though they're going to the court, and they're not. They're actually trying to petition INEC, and INEC sort of are hesitant to be in this role because they say they're independent.
Well, beyond being hesitant, they're actually quite conclusive with their statements that this has nothing to do with us. I mean, if you go towards the last part of the article where it says INEC has no role to play in the election of party officers, and I doubt if those who are complaining were themselves even candidates at the convention, and this was made by the chairman of the convention committee at the light. So my point is that, we need to get to a point of just kind of normality with our electioneering process in Nigeria. These things do happen. You see it all over the world within parties. There are going to be fights, there are going to be issues, there are going to be disagreements. Who should be the convention chairman?
Absolutely.
But just keep it in-house, keep it clean, keep it civil. Do not necessarily bring it out all the time and expose it. Be able to have a healthy dialogue. It is part of democracy.
I was going to say,
you're going to have these disagreements. It's welcomed, but just try and keep it in a very civil manner, and don't now necessarily start bringing in INEC and people of that nature to more or less invigilate your situation.
I mean, but why is it possible to have a civil politics? I mean, let's even look even on a global scale. It tends to get rather messy once there's fighting of any
I guess
nature.
that's a good point. I was trying to find a quippy response to that, and I honestly couldn't yet, because when you look at it globally, it is, I mean, everywhere you're going to have that lack of civic order. But hey, let's try, and let's strive to be better than we were yesterday.
Do our best.
Yeah.
It could bode well for our democratic process. It's good to see that people are trying to push each other to possibly be their best, or possibly just have the best.
And it makes sure it brings about the need for people to be a lot more accountable and for people to act more sensibly and more responsible. So I welcome it, but let's just not necessarily air dirty laundry all the time.
Thank you, Nwaji. Tunde, moving over to you now from the Vanguard newspaper. There's 4.8 trillion naira bad debt. The Senate are to allow AMCON to publish debtors list. Whenever we hear stories of debtors list being published, I feel that people out in the general public roll their eyes. I know that's certainly the temptation in-house. But yesterday, the Senate said that it would soon authorize the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria to publish names of the debtors responsible for 80% of its 4.8 trillion debt. My question to you, Tunde, sort of going through the article is, what good could possibly come of this?
Okay, well, absolutely. Depends on what side you sit. Depends on what side you sit on. Yeah.
Okay.
But before we get to that, look at it. 80% hold of the 4.8 trillion. 80% is held by, just a few just a few people. And if you reflect on data that says that the top 3% of the nation hold over 80% of deposits within the banking system, it makes it very clear that this is a very, we know that it's a handful of people who control the economic and financial lifeblood of the nation. So it's a very small set they're referring to, and I'd say that it, considering
public order and security of persons and property, handed over to the state. According to it, under the leadership of the commissioner that will be appointed by the different levels of government, changing names as well.
So for me, Valentine, context is very key.
Yes.
When you begin to look at the history of why we have a national police force in a federation like Nigeria, a federation of 36 states, a national police force can never work in a federation. It just can't. There's no such ever happening. It only happens in constitutional monarchies and state and countries like that, where you have somewhat of a different layout of how the conversation in the country now works. Now, state policing in Nigeria is a fantastic idea. I fully welcome it. But the challenge is also on the premise of states that cannot even pay basic salaries. So if a state cannot pay basic salaries because they do not have any significant IGR, then how of their state, and that's where the conversation now begins to get murky. So in principle and on paper, it's a beautiful idea, because it does now begin to allow you to ensure that community policing happens. You have more direct individuals handling cases and things in the municipal area handled properly, etc., etc. Why? Because it's better to have individuals from your community handle community issues, especially from a law enforcement point of view. So it's a fantastic idea, but I think this needs to be precipiced on the point of what happens to states who have current issues paying the servants of that state. So what's going to happen? So if you now employ police and you're not able to pay them, you have individuals who are trained in weaponry and all sorts of things to now be left on the streets. So I think we need to be very, very cautious with the acceptability of this reading. I think there needs to be a lot of conversations regarding a phased trial to say, okay, fine, let's look at some states who have the eligibility to be able to have state police, and let's start with them, given their capacity to pay consistent salaries, etc., etc. So that would be my own recommendation, is to phase it out over a period of time, to now have some test case studies to see who can actually handle it, and then let's now look at the viability of those states that have traditional issues with generating revenue, etc., etc. Because once this happens, federal government is not going to step in to now bail you out. They shouldn't, because what's the point? You understand? So that's how I would recommend that this thing happens in a phased out manner to now begin to see how it makes sense.
Interesting. Thank you. I'm just very interested in knowing just, yay or nay, how many people think this is actually going to pass second reading?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I know we have a habit of saying, oh, we're doing something, and then either seated. Okay, but we'll keep an eye on this, though. It's definitely something that the general public are clamoring for, a way out of the area agreement. And he made this comment. He said, on the African continental free trade area agreement. Any moves on that? Just to
maybe it's because he delivers in Trevor Noah voice. Anyway, okay, so first and foremost, let's say we've agreed to sign this now after a lot of urging from literally as every country signs, they kind of plead in Nigeria, and that's indicative of that wealth that everybody wants to join this thing, and we consider a very decent amount of trade on the continent, formal and informal. So will be probably not be as good as it should be without Nigeria and South Africa and other nations. So we finally agreed. We're I think one of 11 that initially felt that we shouldn't, or were at least were cautious. Cautious in doing this, but we have now, and to me it's pretty simple. Trade outside of the continent than it does on the continent, right? We do a lot of trade in Asia, China in particular, a lot of trade with the Netherlands, not just huge volumes with the Netherlands, we do a lot of trade with the US and Britain. Some of that could be intra Africa. It doesn't have necessarily go out. And when there is when demand is in place, it will then encourage economies within the continent to develop and become a lot more viable. So I believe there's a case for it. If you look at the president's stance, it's a lot more. It's more in line with what we see in some economies, especially in the West and in the US, becoming more protectionist, more nationalist, globalization. And his take is that he feels that this is his statement. He added that Nigeria is populated. Probably means that we have a lot of people. We have so many young unemployed citizens, and its industries are just coming up. Right, so I see his point.
Yes.
Every nation does it. Even nations, when they sign, trade deals, there's a level of protectionism that they
incorporate into it. Yes,
exactly. Especially in things like agriculture.
And it's important.
And it's important. And the thing, the stake. Or you sign this trade, but you're protecting your, a specific industry in a particular way. Agriculture is a big one in Europe that they generally protect. So you need some of that. But the thing is not the right?
Okay.
So this his stand is in line with what it's versus globalization, and just my opinion. Buhari, they are
the difference.
But Tunde,
too, it's the consensus for the old generation to move out of
But let me just quickly come into that. See, my issue, and as much as I agree with it, but my issue is that where is the finesse campaign? Where is the charm offensive? We all understand and appreciate the importance of trading within Africa, so that way you can grow industries and give more job opportunities. But we are almost taking this thing for granted.
Absolutely.
You understand? Where is the charm offensive with regards to convincing people of the absolute benefits, even formative, of doing business with your fellow individuals on the continent? And that's what always gets me.
They said the reason why also beyond his sight for the delays because the president insisted on a deeper consultative engagement across the nation. I didn't see any of it, but they said they have done.
Let's move on. We've got a couple of messages to get into very quick. MI from Akoka says, so they can't even get a grip of the internal structure, talking about the reformed APC. How can you bring an electoral body into your family matter? What happened to dialogue and seeking more solutions? What do I know? Even dragging that don't wash their in public. Ooh, okay, we see you. Rainmaker says, I think the R-APC is not serious measures. Are they not the same group that signed accord with parties, our rivals, just last week? That's a double standard. Now, the term R-APC is unconstitutional. Senate wants to shoot for us. It might be bad for them, Sha, because somebody, I don't know what that means at the end, so I'm going to just leave that bit there. Bingus sends in a message saying, what's supposed to be important news here? That the president is a slow reader, or that he's about to sign the agreement sign the African trade agreement. The headline is just being deliberately, and Big T says, not compatible, snow and hell, low prices, and Nigeria. Lastly, PNB and jokes. These things just don't work together, says Big T. Okay, Big T. And very quickly now, this next one in 2 days, still going to stay with you for this. Promoter of 1.1 billion US dollars, Qua Iboe, I can't say the name properly, signs agreement on community development projects. So I'm going to go straight to you. So you have the QIPPL, who are the promoters of a 1 billion Qua Iboe power plant. They've signed a community partnership agreement for the development of communities in Qua Iboe state, talking about commencing construction before the end of this year.
Yeah, it's better to stick with the acronym.
I see that. Thank you.
That will help drive the local economy. It will, in a bunch of ways, the construction of the plants will obviously, and the maintenance of it will create jobs. Economy because of the communities that require to support it. It will generate, and obviously when it comes online, it will generate power, which is essential to economic activity. So this is all around. It's the right type of initiative. It's kind of initiative we want to hear about. It's what we want to hear, that funds are being being spent on. And this is just it's another one of those things that states are doing now that the power sector laws are sort of evolving and changing and sort of democratizing in a sense and letting states carry out power initiatives. So much like the ones we've seen in Lagos, this is something that Qua Iboe is doing, and it's laudable.
Thank you very much for that.
I'm moving on now to Guardian newspaper. Nwaji, I come to you with a story. NCC signs MOU with NSCDC to protect telecoms infrastructure. So most of us heard about the picketing of MTN offices during the week. Now the NCC is wading into this. They actually signed an MOU with the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps to protect switch stations and BTSs, that's the base transceiver stations of service providers in the country. How do you hope that this could help? And I mean, forestall further problems. The other problem that haven't been addressed yet.
Well, you used the word picketing of MTN offices. It wasn't picketing; they actually vandalized them, and that's just pretty much what they did. And people need to start behaving themselves, and there need to be repercussions in place for you vis-a-vis you going to jail for vandalizing private property. It's not yours, it does not belong to you. So if you want to go on picket, you have to engage the necessary authorities that you need to get picketed so that therefore they can come out and make sure that they legislate and enforce and regulate all those particular things. But the minute you have it in your head as a switch that something gives you the right to physically attack another person's property, then I'm sorry, you need to go to jail.
It's temper tantrums and music videos. You know when you get angry, smash some stuff.
Annoying. No. And NLC needs to pay attention to this. Why? Because NLC, we are part of the international labor laws of the world. We have signed up to that, which have its own particular accordances with how you behave when it comes to protest. So please do not step out of line. If individuals want to vandalize, then put those vandals in jail. So I welcome this as an absolute measure that if people are going to vandalize the property that another individual brought out money to invest in the development of that property, then why are you attacking them? Because you're not getting your way? Come on, man.
Yeah, but how did it get
this? You're a petulant child.
How did it get this bad? Could it be that, I mean, perhaps they had tried to initiate negotiations at first, because they know this is closely related with laying off of.
It doesn't matter, though. That's my point. It has no bearing. No matter how bad it gets, whether people get laid off or not, you're not happy with the service that they provide, nothing justifies you vandalizing property. So I will bring in the civil defense force. If people do that, throw them in jail. It's literally that simple.
Handle them.
And I'm all for it, because this is absolutely bad behavior, complete breakdown of civic responsibility. You can just do things without the rule of law or repercussions.
Bad children.
Moving on now to Tunde from the Punch newspaper. Thank you very much for that, Nwaji.
I feel sorry for his kids now. Just imagine when they do something wrong.
They know, and they regulate themselves.
By the time you're done talking, they probably just shut up. Now, the federal government has reconstituted the tax appeal tribunals in the 6 geopolitical zones, as well as Lagos and the FCT. The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, is the one championing this. She said in the statements issued on Thursday by her media advisor, Oluyinka Akintunde, and asked that the responsibility actually be handled by people who are nominated from different federal institutions like the National Accountants Association of Nigeria and some other areas. Now, Tunde, how do you feel this would play out?
Well, this is it's almost like it's a business as usual. It's good for us, but it's almost a business as usual. From the recent.
You couldn't help it. You couldn't. I saw it coming.
Because she's been silent, but she's speaking.
But she's speaking. So some good people with us. Let's focus on the issues. Focus on the issues.
Tax, baby, tax.
So look, the minister. Look, the whole story. The key thing here. The minister stated the Constitution of the Tax Appeals Tribunal is an essential part of building tax trust and transparency. The people, we that we're paying tax, we need to feel, we need to trust it, we need to feel that our money or our tax is going somewhere in some distance and improving.
Tunde, do you feel it?
No, I don't.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm paying where too many people are not paying.
Yes.
Right.
Same
unfortunately. Here. So and to me, it's even sign is why we have bad governance, right? The government doesn't spend enough of our money to run. If they did, right? And we knew that, and we felt the pinch more. All of us felt the pinch more. Then you will get to a place where the people would deliberately start to ask for better governance. It's not that Oyinbo people are better than us. It's just that they're set up, for that kind of the system is set up properly, so things run properly. So it's good. Taxpayer needs to feel trust in the system. I wonder why the tribunals were decommissioned or paused in the first place. So I mean, this is in accordance with of the Federal Inland Revenue Act, and good on her. News stories.
Thank you very much for that, Tunde.
All right, so we have a message in from Olujare. Olujare sent a message on WhatsApp. He says, in my opinion, naming and shaming does not really work in Nigeria. Like Tunde said, most of these people are the so-called elite of the society and have built their lives and business empires on the backbone of borrowing from banks. On the legal angle, one of the consequences of publishing names of debtors is the people whose names have been published head into the courts as well to sue for libel, as they will contest the debts allegedly owed by bringing in forensic accountants who will find illegal bank charges and interest debts if they throw up enough questions about the veracity of the debt. And then the banks and possibly the newspapers could be liable for publishing news which is not yet a proven fact.
It sounds like a story that's playing out.
Yeah, it does, right? Smoke screen.
And this one here says, I'm aware of the several consultations with MAN, that's Manufacturer Association of Nigeria SMEs, and LCCI ETC.
It's talking about signing the trade agreement.
Yes.
Okay, up on Twitter, there are quite a few messages that have come through. First of all, King Babatunde Scott says, Nwaji is angry this morning. Yeah, chastising some people. While if I tutos comment on a couple of issues, says, will the state police really work in a multi-ethnic society like ours? State police when governors can't pay 18k minimum wage of workers. State police when pensioners are being owed for months. State police so that governors will turn them into their personal militia. He carries on saying that yes, the challenges facing the present setup of the police force is enormous, but with a state police, it will be triple of it. State police when non-indigents can't get into the civil service of states. Madness. Reforming the present Nigerian police force is the way to go, he says. While Steve Obiako says state police is the way to go, it, however, must have limited areas of control.
I mean, these are valid
They're all
points.
valid.
So that's why I said we should do some trial states and just see how it works.
Or reform Nigeria.
That's a good move.
Restructure.
That's a
Put
good
it on
move.
the auction block.
Our next story is from Thisday newspaper. The headline reads, Epileptic Power, ROSATOM, which is a Russian company, proposes water as an effective off-grid solution for Nigeria. So we recall that the ROSATOM company, on behalf of the Russian government, recently signed an agreement with Nigeria for the development of a nuclear power plant and a research center, which we're still waiting for. But they actually have stepped in, inspired by the need to address Nigeria's perennial electricity problem. They have decided to suggest to us a mini hydropower station option as an effective solution to ensure access to electricity for it. Actually sounds really nice on paper, but what do you think we're ready or positioned for that yet?
We're not using water before.
That's what I'm saying. This is nothing new. I mean, we have God knows how many dams in Nigeria. There's Kanja Dam, and there's another dam somewhere in Niger State.
So what happened to them?
Born for decades, for as long as anybody can remember. So this is not, and more importantly, this is old technology with regards to how you generate power. It's nothing. It is like ancient.
But they're bringing miniature versions. They said they can.
But that, you see, and this is what happens when any international organization or body comes in to say, "Oh, I have the problem, and
So
I
we're
have
gonna
the
save
solution.
you.
We're going to save you, poor Africans,
Yeah.
and here's the solution." And you're bringing me something that, frankly speaking, people like Abubakar Tafawa Balewa planned in like 1962. It just doesn't make any sense when you have alternative uses of power, alternative ways a year. It is not that complex. Can we go solar? Can we go nuclear? Let's just please bring in this thing and have multiple mini grids that can be accessed anywhere. The technology is there. Procure it, install it, connect it to the sun, and voila. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. It's not that complicated. I don't know why we keep going down this road.
Yeah, but maybe this is kind of voiced and maybe finally act.
You know people have been speaking before.
Exactly.
The ones that we have is the people that set it up.
Thank you.
Like what I said, it's not new tech. Well, if we just say hybrid, depending on how it is. But the truth is there's quite a bit of innovation in hybrid.
Okay.
So it's not just dams.
That's still connected to solar, right?
Yeah. Some of them, some are not. The whole thing is you need some mechanical way to drive a turbine. When you can drive a turbine, you combine mechanical energy into electrical energy, right? And dams are not just the only way to do it. So there's new technology, some for hydro, some using whirlpools, right? So it's not just about holding water down in some place and then, dropping it to force the turbine to move. So there are people and we may have natural whirlpools. Some are creating artificial ones. So they're looking at our water system and water and say, oh, you got a natural whirlpool here. Why don't you just put a turbine or something?
I see.
Which requires less electrical generation.
Exactly. And it requires a smaller footprint than a dam, and it's less destructive.
There you go.
Right. So there's innovation and a bunch. So they're probably looking at it and say we're not optimizing our water resources in terms of power generation.
Gentlemen, always so enlightening having both of you on the show. And we've got a few comments we're going to round up with. Bamidele from Lagos sends in quite a few fantastic, almost like 1 to 2 liners. So I'm going to have to read these out. He says, first of all, name and shame is not enough. Outright seizure is better, followed by prosecution. Billions are sweet to spend on name and shame.
It's not criminal to owe money.
Well, he goes on to say that MTN has hitherto vandalized customers' call credit, which I was like, that's go into that one from me, not about
my paps. Shout out to my people. Sorry about the traffic.
Says state police for states who cannot pay salary. Only states like Lagos, Rivers, Kaduna, and Kano can handle state police. Others should just keep quiet. I wonder if anyone's really going to push for regional police, which is something that had been suggested.
Can I propose that we collapse all states into those ones you mentioned there? Then they're the only ones viable.
And then we've got Ozzy sending in some love. She says, hey Nwaji, we're related. Bob's my uncle. Hey cuz. I think that's a good note to end on a Feel Good Friday for Freshly Pressed. Thank you very much. Please find Nwaji up on Twitter as the corporate MC with a K, and you can find Tunde Okufi up there as at Big Cuffs. Great guys to have conversations with. But coming up next, we're going to switch the conversation and talk about sports. No, Nwaji, you won't be here for sports conversation, so you will not be trolling me on the air. I'm just gonna call them out.
Your personal invitation.
Do not ever enter like a sports conversation with Nwaji by mistake.
You will lose.
Oh, no problem. Good morning, Lagos. Keep listening to Smooth Breakfast with Valentine.
And Folu.
The headlines.